If you believe some battles don't leave scars, they leave silence. Like and subscribe, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's the kind of truth that speaks louder than strikes, louder than protocol, and sometimes louder than the battlefield itself. The rust-colored dust kicked up behind the Humvee tires as the last convoy rolled out for the day, and in the shadow of the motor pool's wire fence, Sergeant Liana Voss adjusted her long-sleeve combat shirt for the 10th time that morning. She always wore sleeves, even in 106-degree Kandahar heat, even when others stripped to tan tees and rolled their cuffs. No one asked why. Most didn't care. She was background. Logistics. The one who made sure fuel flowed and manifests made sense. To Lieutenant Dalton and the others fresh from command school, she was just another dusty clipboard in boots. Paper sergeant, someone had muttered once during a mission sync, not low enough. She hadn't reacted then. Didn't react now. Just sipped her burnt coffee from a steel thermos that had outlasted free units. She never corrected the assumption that she was a lifer admin or stateside reserve. Let them think what they wanted. She learned years ago that people only listened when things went wrong. And even then, they rarely remembered who warned them first. But she watched. Always watched. Like during yesterday's route briefing, when the drone path crossed an IED marker she recognized from a different year, different war. No one noticed when she quietly shifted the supply truck's departure by 20 minutes. They only noticed that the blast missed them. And even then, they called it luck. That morning, as the mission brief room filled with the scrape of chairs and the overconfident chatter of junior officers, Liana sat in the back, as usual. She wasn't technically required to be there. But she came anyway. Logistics didn't stop just because egos were busy. The screen at the front flickered with satellite feeds and convoy schematics. She noticed a delay in the drone uplink, a gap in signal between Checkpoint Bravo and the Ridge. No one else mentioned it. The new intel kid, Parker, maybe, barely out of school, was too busy getting flustered over PowerPoint animations. Lieutenant Dalton leaned on the table, smirking like the heat never touched him. "We'll be fine," he said, waving off a question about insurgent patterns. "These guys can't even spell ambush." A couple of chuckles echoed from the back. Liana said nothing. She tapped a note into her pad, cross-referencing wind direction and visibility for the route's weakest spot. She wasn't trying to show anyone up. She just wanted people to come home. Across from her, Corporal Reyes glanced up, caught her eye, then quickly looked away. He'd seen her working late in the comms tent more than once, rewriting dispatch logs to account for changes she was never told about. He never said anything either, because people like Liana weren't loud. They weren't the ones kicking doors. But when those door kickers needed water, route clearance, or med-evac timing to the second, they asked logistics. And they rarely remembered the names. That afternoon, while checking a delay in the radio relay near the southern OP, Liana paused by the field locker. Her sleeve slipped just a little as she reached for the panel. A tattoo, barely visible, black and faded, peeked from beneath the cuff. Just a fragment of a phoenix, wings curled around a number. She tugged the sleeve back down quickly, but not before someone saw it. The new lieutenant. Dalton. He raised an eyebrow, then chuckled. "Nice ink. What is that?" "Your astrology sign." She didn't respond, just tightened the cuff and turned away. "But it's one of those Pinterest tats," he added louder, nudging Parker. "She probably thinks it makes her look dangerous." More laughter. She said nothing. That night, under the drone port canopy, Liana sat alone, reviewing SATCOM lag reports. She didn't speak when the team passed her on the way to the DFAC, didn't glance up when Parker mumbled an awkward, "Evening, man," as if embarrassed now. She simply took a sip of her coffee and rewound the security feed, twice, watching for the same glitch in drone relay that no one else seemed to care about. And if anyone had asked, really asked, she would have told them. About how that phoenix symbol wasn't some trend. About how it marked her as one of 7 who'd survived Operation Ghost Trail, a mission so deep it didn't officially exist. How it had ended with silence, with a burn notice, and a promise made in the back of a Black Hawk. "We don't talk. We don't need to." But no one asked. No one ever did. Until the next morning, when a visiting CENTCOM colonel entered the brief room unannounced, pulled up the same route map, and started asking hard questions. Eyes darted around the room. No one had answers. Except her. She cleared her throat quietly and pointed at the Bravo gap. The colonel paused. turned, narrowed his eyes at her. Then he saw it. A flicker of ink beneath her sleeve as she gestured, and he stopped speaking, stared. Sergeant Voss, he said slowly, voice shifting. Was that a seventh phoenix? The room froze. Someone whispered, "What's seventh phoenix?" But no one answered. Not yet. Not until Liana Voss finally rolled her sleeve halfway up, just enough. And in that room, in that moment, the briefing stopped being about maths and started being about memory. And respect. The kind earned, not given. The kind some people had never even known they were standing next to. Until now. The room didn't breathe. Not when the colonel stepped forward. Not when his boots stopped just short of her seat. Not when the dust in the overhead projector lens danced in the slanted morning sun. The silence stretched tight, stretched sharp. Then, with a tone that made every junior officer in the room sit straighter, he spoke again. I haven't seen that mark since Mosul. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut clean. Liana Voss looked up from her notepad, sleeve rolled just enough to show what they'd all missed for years, the full emblem, an ink-black phoenix mid-flight, talons clutching a broken watch. Below it, the digits 3.42.7. The colonel didn't blink. Ghost trail. Liana gave a single nod. Third squad. 7 in. For returned. No bravado. Just facts. Dalton, who had been so smug the day before, now looked like he'd swallowed gravel. Parker fumbled with his tablet, his screen forgotten. No one moved. The colonel exhaled slowly, looked at her the way soldiers do when they recognize the one person in the room who already did the thing they're all afraid to admit might kill them. "Why the hell are you back here?" he asked genuinely. She didn't look away. "Because the job isn't done." He shook his head once, half in disbelief, half in admiration. "You wrote half the recon manual I teach now. No one told me you were still active." "No one asked," she said evenly. Dalton opened his mouth, then wisely closed it again. The colonel turned toward the front of the room, cleared his throat, and in that one beat, the air in the space shifted. Rank reordered itself. "For the record," the colonel said, voice steady, "anyone who ever served under the 7th Phoenix during forward recon has earned the right to override this entire mission brief." He gestured to Liana. "She's calling the route now." It wasn't a suggestion. It was doctrine. Command by history. Liana stood, quietly, without ego, moved to the front. Her boots made no sound on the floor, but her presence filled the space. She didn't wave hands or raise her voice. She just began speaking, pointing at the weak choke point, the signal delay window, the wind-sheared blind spot that would cost them lives. Her fingers drew patterns across the map like muscle memory. "You're not accounting for elevation gain in the northwest corridor. Comms will lag 9 seconds behind confirmation, which makes Bravo route a death sentence if they time the mortar correctly." Dalton's jaw tightened. "We cleared that with signals." "Then your signal team needs retraining," she said without venom. "We buried 3 men because of that mistake in '08. The colonel nodded. "She's right. I remember that day." Liana continued. "We switched to Sierra 4. Less cover, but full comms relay from both towers. It buys us visibility and removes blind approach. Use the dead zone as bait." She marked the times, recalculated the departure. Not a word from the gallery. Not a smirk. No eye rolls. Just stillness. By the end of the brief, every head was turned her way. And for the first time in years, Liana Voss wasn't invisible. She wasn't a placeholder in a long-sleeved shirt. She was what she had always been. The reason they'd get to go home. The next day, the convoy rolled on Sierra 4. No ambush. No casualties. The bait worked. They intercepted chatter confirming the original ambush plan exactly where Liana said it would be. She didn't gloat. She didn't speak at all when the colonel debriefed them, giving her full credit. Afterward, the room stood up when she entered. Not because of her badge. Because of her past. That night, Dalton found her in the comms tent, unsure where to look. He scratched his head, stammered something about misunderstanding, and "You've just been so quiet." She gave him a long look. Not angry, just tired. "I didn't come back for recognition," she said. "I came back because the last time I trusted someone else's planning, I carried 3 men out under moonlight." He looked down. "I get it now." "I doubt it," she said, not unkindly. "But maybe someday you will." Word spread quickly. The ink, the mission, the correction. And suddenly her name wasn't just Voss. It was Ma'am, Sarge, the one who spotted the trap. Officers started asking her opinion before writing briefs. Junior analysts began shadowing her without being told. One of them, Reyes, stopped by her station and asked, awkwardly, "Ma'am, is that tattoo from the classified op they called Echo Drop?" Liana blinked once. That op never happened. He nodded quickly. Of course. Just wondered. It's beautiful. It's not, she said quietly. It's a grave marker. The next morning, a small photo appeared on the mission board. 7 soldiers in sandblasted gear, blurry and old. In the middle, younger, sharper-eyed, stood Liana, expression unreadable. Someone taped it up without a word. Underneath, scribbled in Sharpie, "We almost didn't know. Glad we do now." They didn't call it a ceremony. No orders were given. No memo circulated. But the mess hall filled to standing room only that Friday morning. Officers in pressed fatigues, engineers with grease-stained collars, drone pilots, radio techs, even medics who had just come off back-to-back rotations. All of them gathered under flickering fluorescence without ever saying why. Liana Voss sat quietly near the back, thermos in hand, sleeves rolled up for the first time since anyone could remember. The Phoenix ink now visible, sharp against her forearm, no longer something hidden. The colonel stepped up to the center of the room, but didn't stand on the small stage. He didn't need elevation. Liana's story had already risen higher than protocol. "I'm not here to give a speech," he began. "I'm here to remind everyone what silence costs when it's mistaken for absence." His eyes scanned the crowd. Sergeant Voss corrected a plan that could have cost lives. Not because it was her job, but because it's what she's always done: protect without demand, lead without asking. No one moved. No one blinked. Then, slowly, he reached into a small case on the table beside him. Not a medal, not a certificate, a patch, frayed, aged, stained with a bit of sand from a war they'd stopped naming. The insignia, a phoenix in mid-dive. He held it up. "You won't find this in your standard issue inventory. Most of the files attached to it are still sealed. But for those who wore this, it wasn't ink. It was bond." He crossed the room and handed it to Liana. No dramatics. No applause. Just silence. Reverent, still, and deeper than any salute. Liana took it with both hands, eyes briefly flickering with something between grief and pride. "I didn't speak up to be heard," she said finally, her voice even. "I spoke up because people don't come back from silence. And I've already buried enough of them." The mess hall held its breath. Somewhere near the back, Dalton lowered his head. Not out of shame, but out of understanding. The kind that doesn't come from books or simulations. After the crowd slowly dispersed, no fanfare, just nods and quiet acknowledgement. A few officers approached her one by one. Not with orders, not with praise, but with questions. Real ones. About terrain shifts. About enemy rhythm. About how she knew when not to trust intel. She answered like she always had. Simply, directly, patiently. That night, the new team of logistics NCOs sat with her around the folding table outside the barracks. One of them, Reyes, asked, "Ma'am, were you always this invisible?" She looked down at her coffee. "Only when it mattered." He paused, thoughtful. "Do you ever wish people had known sooner?" She shook her head. They weren't ready. A week later, the command building added a new training module to the base-wide ops manual, titled Route Forecasting Based on Pattern Recognition. The byline read, "Adapted from the field observations of SGT, L. Voss, Ret. 7th Phoenix." And still, she never asked for anything. But people kept coming. They'd sit beside her outside the drone canopy during night shifts, ask her about how sand changes sound, how wind bends light. And she'd answer. Never the story, only the science behind it. She never used names. Never bragged. She'd just tap her sleeve once, as if to say, "I carry them here." Then, one day, she was gone. No discharge party. No banner. No official statement. Just a folded note on her desk. Convoy manifest finalized. Comms realigned. Sierra, for stable. It's yours now. On her cot, a box. Inside, the old patch. The original. The one the colonel gave her, now pinned beside her worn-down thermos and a notebook, full of route notes and timestamps. Each page dated in precise handwriting. She left it all behind. The next sergeant in charge, a young woman named Grant, found it first. She read it, sat with it, and when asked how she learned to lead so well, she only said, I listened to the one who never raised her voice. Word made it back to command. And without anyone voting on it, the East Side Drone Bay was renamed. Not with brass plates or ribbon. Just paint on corrugated steel. The Voss line, respect flies quiet. Months later, a new lieutenant on his first tour stopped by her old post, stared at the tattoo photo on the wall, and muttered, "Wish I'd met her." Grant heard him, smiled faintly. "You did. You just didn't notice." And that's the truth about some veterans. Some come home loud. Some come home broken. But a few come home like Voss, quiet, steady, sleeves rolled down, waiting for the moment someone finally sees past the silence. And when that happens, they don't ask for your respect. They remind you how much it was worth all along.